Hello, my name's Graham Stagg and I'm going to be explaining this grammar clinic for the ESPOL Academic Writing Center and the Programma Comunicate. This workshop has a specific focus, and that is to improve your ability to edit your written work, focusing on correct subject-verb agreement, which I have identified is a common problem for people writing in English as a foreign language. So let's start by looking at a text. You should have this worksheet with a text and some questions, and the slides are going to refer to the worksheet. Ideally you would have that in your hand, or it could be open in another window possibly. So if you look at these pictures, where do you think these places are? Pause the video a moment to think. So the picture on the left is a village in West Africa, and the picture on the right, that's a street in the city of Alberta in Canada. So could you now pause the video again and read the text that you have on the worksheet and answer these questions. How are the people different? How are the buildings different? What else is different? Okay, pause now. So I hope that you've read and found some examples regarding the people. Maybe you found that in the African village there were some dishonest people, whereas in Alberta people are more honest. In the African village people were also poorer. They wore dirty, torn clothes as opposed to clean, trendy clothes. Most people were black and looked like the writer, while in Alberta there were people from different origins. Most people in Alberta speak English and French in school, but in the village people spoke 3 different languages. The buildings are ancient, or the city is ancient and crowded in Africa, and the buildings are generally small, whereas in Alberta they're bigger and there's more space between them. She also mentioned animals, rubbish and democracy. Let's check some basic grammatical terms that we're going to focus on. If you look at these sentences on screen or in your worksheet and pause the video again and underline the subjects and circle the verbs in these sentences. Do that now. So you should be able to identify the subject, my village, or let's go to the next screen. Okay. Here we have the subjects, and so the verb in sentence 1 would be is, the verb in sentence 2 is in the first part, and the verb here were learned. So we can conclude as shown on screen. A simple sentence has a subject and verb, and the subject could be a noun or a pronoun. Some sentences have more than one clause, and each clause usually has a separate subject and a verb. So when we're looking at subject-verb agreement, it's basically at clause level. If you can continue to read through this part of the text until the word school and underline the subjects and circle the verbs to check that this part is clear for you. Pause and do that now. Okay, let's continue. I'm not going to show you all of those answers. I'm going to go on and focus on some of the considerations when we're checking subject-verb agreement. So this phrase, the verb must agree with the subject, what do we mean? If we use the verb be as an example, for the subject I, we use the verb am in the present simple form. You are, etc. So there's a correct verb form that matches or corresponds to the subject. We need to take this into account, especially when we're using the present tense and the past tense of be. Not all past tenses, because they don't have multiple forms. Can you see any examples of these in the text? Pause again and have a look. So resuming, you might have seen, for example, this is a nice city. We speak 3 different languages, present tense. People were dishonest, past tense of be. It was hard. There are some other cases you should also remember with continuous tenses, because we're using the verb be, as you can see in the example. They are preparing. With the perfect tense, because we're using the verb has. The people has started waiting outside. Is this correct? Outside the cafeteria? No. We should say the people have started. Have started, because in English people are considered to be a plural group. And when we use there, we also need to consider the verb that we're using, and that will correspond to the noun that we mention in the sentence that we refer to. Sometimes it's not always so easy to identify what the subject is referring to when there is more than one word. We need to be careful to identify the head noun. In this case, we're talking about the village, not about the country. It doesn't actually affect that the verb would be is, but in other cases it could be important. So, my village is different to this city. And we also need to recognize when we've got these different subjects that could have more than one word, whether they're subject, whether they're singular or plural. That's fundamental. So pause again and look at these examples. Can you place them in the correct column in the table? Starting again, let's see the answers. So if we were using the verb be, then with the singular form we might be using is or was, is in the present tense, and in the plural form are. A final point that you should take account of: there are other words which we can get confused with, deciding whether they're singular or plural. Here I've listed some pronouns, and you can consider that these words, with these words we use the singular form. So if it was the present tense of be, is, and here with these words the plural form are. With academic subjects, and there are some other types of words there, we consider these as singular. Physics is a very interesting subject. Physics was my favourite subject at school. Some words could be singular or plural. An example is family. When we're considering the group in unison, it's singular. And when we're considering the individuals that make up the group, we would use the plural form. And there are some other words underneath that this also applies to. So in the workshop we practice a little making sentences using these words. So for example, we could say that there are some animals in the bed. Several animals are asleep, and some animals are awake. A few animals are asleep, and most animals are awake. And those animals on the right are going to fall out of the bed, like the hedgehog is falling out of bed now, and probably the zebra is going to fall out of bed next, and finally everyone is going to fall out of bed except for the boy. And this is a song that we sing to children called 10 in the Bed. And so if you refer to your worksheet, there are some practice activities. Complete the practice activities and then check the answers. When you've checked your answers, then you can apply what you've learnt in this workshop to your written work. Thank you for watching.